It's the last day of the offsite. The meetings were productive, the energy was contagious, exactly what the team needed. The CEO pulls you aside to say, "Thank you, this was next level." And you smile because it felt that way to you too. You found the secret to delegating the logistics so you could focus on shaping your team's experience. You used Offsite. They handled the venues, the negotiations, the logistics, and together you created an experience that will move your business forward. Sound too good to be true? It's actually within reach, and it can even save you money. See how at leaderassistant.com/offsite. Hey friends, thanks for tuning in to the Leader Assistant podcast. I'm excited to share another spotlight episode of my friend Diana Brandl's show, Executive Office Insights. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information about her show and today's featured guest. But in the meantime, enjoy this conversation and keep leading well.
The Leader Assistant podcast exists to encourage and challenge assistants to become confident, game-changing leader assistants.
Check out the show notes to this episode at leaderassistant.com/369.
It is always a huge pleasure for me to introduce my international network to all of you. And today it is Patrick Jephson, former private secretary and chief of staff to the late Princess Diana. He was responsible for every aspect of her public life and private organization. And I can tell you, there are so many great stories he's sharing with us while he was working for 8 years alongside Princess Diana. But of course, there's so much more to learn about Patrick. He's now working as a consultant, a journalist, a broadcaster. He is a New York Times best-selling author. And I can tell you, he has been appeared in every UK national newspaper and also a few international titles like the Time magazine, Vanity Fair, People, and of course our German Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. He is also consulting at the very famous network series The Crown. I'm sure many people of you have seen all those wonderful episodes already. I cannot wait for the new ones to arrive. So he's consulting. He's working with the actors there, and he has a lot to share with us. So I'm very honored to introducing the wonderful Patrick Jephson to you all. Please enjoy. Welcome everybody to the podcast, The Future Assistant, a podcast full of inspiration, encouragement, and empowerment for administrative professionals. Tune in, level up, and get motivated by the stories you are about to hear. So here we are again with another episode for the Future Assistant podcast. And I am connected now to a gentleman based in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Welcome, Patrick Jephson. An honor to have you here on the show today.
Diana, it's great to be with you again.
Yes, and it's just wonderful to continue our talk because the expert session we were running in December 2020 was such a huge success, and I've been receiving so many messages from people who were not able to attend. So I told them I need to get you in front of a microphone again in order to tell your story again and what's happening in your life. So I'm very happy that you agreed to do that again. So here we are. A warm welcome to you, Patrick. And I mentioned it already. You're based in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and I'm quite familiar with the area from my au pair year back in the year 1998, 1999. I know I feel like a little old now when I say that, but it was a wonderful time living in the Virginia area. But hey, you are not originally from the U.S. actually. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, Patrick?
Well, Diana, I'm really very fortunate in that I have, I suppose, a bit of a mixed up background. I'm a bit of a, if I were a puppy, I'd be a mongrel probably. I was born and grew up in Ireland, and I've always been grateful for that. It's a real bonus in a way to have a perspective on the world that comes from a small country.
Right.
I'm also fortunate in that, I don't know why particularly, but Irish people seem to be welcome wherever they go in the world, and I've always found that, and I'm very grateful. My mother was from Scotland, and she had a strong belief in education, and she had all boys, and she believed in us being independent and being confident. She sent us to a Scottish boarding school where, we were toughened up pretty well. And then I went to Cambridge, where I read political science, which I was told was a great degree for conversation at cocktail parties, and that has certainly proved the case. Then I at that time, I already had quite a sense of adventure, and I was interested in history, and I went and worked for 2 seasons on a big archaeological dig in Jordan, and traveled around the Middle East, hitchhiking mostly, which was very formative. And it gave me the sense for adventure and for travel. And while at Cambridge, I applied to join the Royal Navy, the British Navy, because I was attracted by the pictures in the recruitment brochure. I liked the idea of serving something bigger than myself. And it's true, an employer like the Navy that requires you not just to sail around the oceans, but also, if necessary, to give your life for the job, that concentrates your mind. And that appealed to me. I was glad that even on a bad day, I could look at the ship or at the flag or at the sailors and think, yep, this is something really worth serving. And I think I was fortunate, and I would recommend that to anybody. If you can serve something bigger than yourself, feel you are part of something worthwhile, that's a real reward. That's a great benefit. While I was there in the Navy, I was selected to be Princess Diana's military aide on a 2-year secondment, which was sort of like winning the lottery, certainly at that time in the late 80s, to go from bobbing around the ocean in a little grey ship to working for the most glamorous, beautiful photographed woman in the world was quite surreal. But I suppose, again, the message from that was I didn't really know what the job was, but I knew that I wanted to do it. I just felt that when I looked back on my life, it was an opportunity I couldn't have turned down.
Absolutely. And we have to also add that you were the first and only private secretary and chief of staff to the late Princess of Wales, Diana. So, of course, the audience is keen to know, how did you land this job?
There I was as a military aide on a 2-year secondment. But at the end of that time, Princess Diana and Prince Charles were beginning to separate. I mean, it was very sad, but that was the reality. And so she said to me, don't go back to the Navy. Come and set up my office, work for me full time, run my public life. And she said, we will go conquer the world.
And I remember you told me that you had this the conversation over lunch with her, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like aiming high. So dream big. That's a good rule. But again, I was quite sure that the job was going to be difficult and challenging and probably very stressful, but I couldn't turn it down. She was a very difficult lady to say no to. But I just knew that, again, if I ever lived to be old, that I would want to look back on it, and it would be sure to give me memories, but also, like the Navy, lots of travel. I would go interesting places. And
even aviation was involved, and you were a huge aviation fan.
Yes. Now, Diana, it's funny you mention that, because it sounds silly, but I am interested in airplanes. And Diana used to laugh at me when we went on the Royal Airplane. You know, I would be interested in the airplane. And she would laugh, and she said, oh, Patrick, you know, what a kid you are. But there were many times, particularly very stressful or difficult times, when being able to take a little holiday for myself in the airplane, just in my mind, even. And I think that's a good tip. If you have a passion, I mean, it could be orchids or stamp collecting or dancing. I mean, if you have a passion, develop it, use it, because it will be a wonderful refuge for you in tough times. And of course, we went on lots of interesting airplanes and we flew fascinating places. I mean, just operationally, that aspect of the job fascinated me.
So how was it on the Concorde the first time? What was the feeling?
Well, the Concorde, of course, the supersonic airliner, was the ultimate way to travel. There was nothing better than the Concorde. It was, if you arrived on the Concorde, you were special. And many of my favorite travel memories with Princess Diana were flights on the Concorde, not least because it was very comfortable and there was very nice wine and the food was good. But one time Diana said to me, you really enjoy this, Patrick, don't you? And I said, yeah, I do, as it happens. And she said, well, I'm only doing this to keep you happy. Said, thank you. And one time the captain of the Concorde came back into the cabin and said to the princess, well, Your Royal Highness, would you like to come in the cockpit, for the takeoff? And she said, no, thanks, but Patrick will come.
And you were like, oh, yes, I'm in, right?
Yeah, but the poor captain was disappointed. He wanted the princess, and he ended up with me.
But, what was the flight time again from London to New York? Was it 3 hours or something?
It was 3 hours going and sometimes, less than 3 hours coming back.
Wow.
But of course, Diana, even if you were in Concorde or in, as we often were, interesting private planes, you were still working. And I think for a lot of our listeners, people think it's very glamorous going in the company jet. And of course it is sometimes, but the truth is it's a flying office. And in that sort of close job where you are working very for prolonged periods in close contact with your boss, you have to be on duty all the time. You cannot let your guard slip. And so, yes, a lot of the flying was fun, but it was also some of the toughest time, a lot of hard work, no relaxing. I could be more relaxed in the back row of economy in the British Airways plane coming back from the reconnaissance trip. That was easier.
Yes, I can only imagine. So you've seen great places traveling together with Diana. So is there anything you specifically love to remember you want to share with us? One of these moments?
Well, I suppose really the thing, Diana, was the contrast. One trip you might be in rural Africa visiting a refugee camp or a very, very moving hospital for orphans dying of HIV/AIDS. Mm-hmm. And then the next week you might be in Washington in the White House meeting the president. So again, that's very intellectually very satisfying, being able to, you have to be versatile, you have to adapt quickly, you have to be very agile in terms of your protocol and your cross-cultural understanding. So any of us who get the chance to be exposed to widely varying environments, yes, it's enviable, I suppose, but it is also stressful. It's not for everybody. Yes. And you have to know yourself and your own personal setup, whether that is going to thrill you and energize you, or whether it's going to damage you, whether it's going to deprive you of the right work-life balance, whether you are just not physically, constitutionally sufficiently versatile. There's no shame in that, but it is important that if you find yourself in that sort of role, you have to be able to give it everything. And you have to feel that you are succeeding, because if you're not, it can eat away at your self-confidence. Every day I had a battle with imposter syndrome. Yeah. I would think, what am I doing here?
Yes. and being away from your family, right? I mean,
yes. Work-life balance is a real thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Very small at the time. And, if I have a regret, it is that I didn't have my work-life balance properly organized. Yeah. Okay. At the time, it seemed important. The job seemed more important. And many of us feel like that with our our roles. But let me tell you, from a position as now having grown up daughters, you never get back those years when they are small. And yes, the work may be exciting and it may be very fulfilling for you personally, but just remember, the graveyards are full of indispensable people.
Absolutely. You are so right, Patrick. Yeah. So why don't you give us a little insight about the job, actually? How was it to organize the life of Princess Diana?
Well, I had a great advantage in that she had asked me to set it up. So I was not taking over an organization that was running well or running badly. An organization that's running well puts a lot of pressure on you, and so is taking over a bad organization, because you then have to improve it. By starting something off, that in a way is perhaps the biggest challenge of all, because what you do sets the standard, and you have a lot of freedom. Well, Diana gave me a lot of freedom to set it up the way I wanted, and I had a pretty good idea how I wanted it to be. With Diana, it was always important to remember that she was extremely professional. I know that we have this image of her now as a very emotionally approachable, rather informal kind of super celebrity, but actually she was a professional. She worked really hard. She was diligent. In fact, the letter D comes up quite a bit. She was diligent. She was dutiful. She was very committed to her work, not just as a humanitarian, but as a royal person too. So while a lot of our work, particularly overseas, was charity-based, a lot of it too was trade promotion, diplomacy, cultural work. These things are forgotten about her, but we need to remember, and I like to remind myself and others that she was first and foremost a kind of ambassador for her country. She took that very seriously. She was very dutiful, very diligent, very detail-oriented.
Yes.
With some bosses, you can get things past them. You can, as they say in English, pull the wool over their eyes. You can kind of get away with stuff. I could get away with nothing.
She would see the mistake in a letter or whatever?
Not so much in the letter. I mean, because she was very smart, but she was not academically very, very accomplished, as she admitted. But she was very smart, very observant. And, some organizations, you can get away with second-rate work.
Yeah.
With Diana, you could not. She was very, very observant. But it taught me that you have to develop what I call forgivability. You have to have a relationship with your boss where they will trust you to tell them if you make a mistake.
Yeah.
So very, very early on in my time with Diana, I made a point of going to her and saying, "Look, I've made a mistake." And she said, "Nobody makes mistakes in the British royal family." I said, "Well, I just made a mistake." And she said, nobody has ever admitted that to me before.
Wow.
So it was great in that she then trusted me to tell her if things went wrong. Not too often, but just enough to allow her to forgive me. Because forgivability, and I now teach this to my clients, it is that quality that gets you the benefit of the doubt when you make a mistake.
Right.
Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does. But the key is how you respond, how you build back, how you use the mistake to make things better in future. And again, dealing with Diana's the staff that I recruited, I encouraged the sense of that people could share information. That was very important. That we were very tight knit, very lean, as they say. We were responsive, nimble, quite in royal terms, we were quite thrifty too. We were good value. But this idea that individuals had to be able to feel that they could admit their mistakes without fearing failure, but they could admit mistakes and we could all benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just mentioned that she was very detail-oriented. How else would you describe her as a boss? Kind of a leadership style she had.
She had terrific leadership qualities, and bear in mind, in the Navy, we studied leadership, and I served under some great leaders. Diana had natural leadership. She was obviously physically very, very imposing. She was 5'10". What's that? Just under 2 meters.
Right.
plus hair and heels. She had a very penetrating blue gaze. Her eyes were very powerful instruments. She used them really well.
Yes.
And she could read people. She could read the mood. She could read a room. Mm-hmm. She thrived on challenges, difficult people, mm-hmm. People sometimes who didn't like her, people who were not fans, just obviously as she was with people who were in great need or who were suffering.
Right.
So as her leadership style was to develop a sense of spontaneity, but always to prepare hard, to work hard, to prepare the details. And this is the trick. The great leaders make it look easy.
Yes.
But it isn't. It looks easy because they did the hard work first. And people like me did the
You were in the back,
too.
Of course. The hidden leaders, right?
Yeah.
Indeed.
I used to say behind every great woman, there is a man worrying about the schedule.
Oh, and by the way, can you tell the story about Mother Teresa? And you were worried about catching that plane. I need to hear this again, please, Patrick.
Well, to tell you something about Diana's style, her leadership style, her management style, she was extremely time conscious, mm-hmm. very, very punctual. She said, this is courtesy. And therefore, I was in trouble if the program got behind, if things were not happening on time. So
yes.
I tried to develop her programs, her timetable for every day, with a little bit of extra time here and there so that she could be spontaneous, so that she could stop, talk, chat. But we were visiting Mother Teresa, and I had not left much time for spontaneity. It all seemed very well organized. We knew when things were supposed to happen. And we were running on time. I was feeling very pleased. And then Mother Teresa said, "Will you come and pray with me in my private chapel?" To Diana and to me, actually. And you don't say no to Mother Teresa.
Yes.
I couldn't look at my watch and say, no, sorry, no time. So we went in to pray in Mother's private chapel. And that, of course, was a very, very special experience.
Oh, yes.
Extraordinarily mm-hmm. spiritually intense.
Right.
So we were praying, and I was thinking, I wonder how long this is going on. I kind of looked up from my prayer, and there was Mother Teresa still praying. And I looked across at Diana, and she was going, I question, how long? What's next here? So then I started praying, please, Lord, may this prayer end soon.
We have to catch a plane. Exactly. That's a wonderful story. I always love when you hear that. Thank you so much for sharing it again with us, Patrick.
and of course, we did leave exactly on time. So. Always, but the moral of the story is always leave time for prayer.
By the way, speaking of Mother Teresa, of course, you met many other incredible people during the time with Diana. There was Bono, there was Hillary Clinton, and many, many more. So what were the people you remember instantly, and why? It's
true, Diana. I was very fortunate in meeting, a lot of big names. But mm-hmm. The rule I made for myself was it doesn't matter who I'm meeting. I have to continue to do my job. Right. You couldn't afford to be distracted by the people you're meeting or the places you were or the whatever may else be going on.
Right.
You have to remain focused. Yes, some of those sort of famous people do stay in my memory, but the ones, who really stay in my memory, who meant the most at the time, were not the famous faces. They were the ones in the background, or the people way down the importance order who were just doing their job and doing it very well, who had time to be kind, or who did that extra bit that made the difference for me between success and big success. And I think that was a good lesson also, that I learned to judge the so-called important people by how they treated the less important people.
Yes.
And I recognized the real heroes and the angels and the saints and just the great people were not the ones who were rushing up to be in the camera or to meet the princess. I think they were just doing their jobs, and they were great fun. And many of them remain friends to this day. And many of them, in some places we traveled, their lives were at risk. Their families were at risk. They endured extraordinary difficulties and privations, and it always reminded me how fortunate I was, and reminded me to count my own blessings. And that's still something I do.
That's true, and it's wonderful how you describe this. Very humble. I really enjoyed listening to that, Patrick. Thank you. So you resigned actually from the position a year before the tragic death of Diana. Why did you find it was time to actually stop working for her and move on? When did you feel it?
I suppose there were a number of factors. If you have a demanding job, an intense job, when you're working very closely with somebody, you're going to have some bad days. You have to be prepared for it. I sometimes have the impression that people expect every day to be wonderful. Maybe for some people it is, but for me, I had some very difficult times. And when you're working closely with somebody, you have your own bad times and you have their bad times too.
Sure.
And you have to be able to absorb their bad moods, their bad days, their bad temper, whether it's your fault or not. That goes with working closely with somebody. So it follows that in that very close sort of relationship, you have to be able to read each other's moods, really, and to adapt for them, allow for them. There has to be complete trust. And when, as inevitably it happens, you go through a bad patch. Yeah. I went through several. You have to be able to develop the necessary thick skin. You have to be able to absorb the criticism. It doesn't always come from your boss. It can come from other people. I mean,
right.
Okay, royal courts throughout history have been famous for court politics, but every organization has its court. They have their kings and their princes and their ambitious jokers, and we all have to deal with these difficult interpersonal aspects. I thought it was part of my job also to monitor my relationship with my boss. I always had to ask myself, how's it going? How can I make it better? Right. Where are the threats? How are things? It was part of my job to make sure that things ran smoothly. And when it was apparent that there was something wrong, I had to make a judgment as to whether or not this was just one of those difficult patches that would blow over, or whether it was something more permanent. And was there anything I could do about it? Now, I've since learned, and really only just last year, that a BBC journalist called Martin Bashir, had got to the princess through her brother and had told her lies about me, libels, libelous stuff, legally culpable things about me, intended to destroy that working trust so that he could get past me to get to her, because I would, I would never have let her speak to him.
Exactly, that famous interview, right?
Yeah, and because he successfully persuaded her that I was actually not to be trusted. Yeah. That two things happened. One, the relationship between me and her obviously was no longer working the way it had to. Right. And secondly, she agreed to do an interview with him, which was suicidally bad idea, very damaging, and it destroyed her much of her royal potential. Yeah. And just on a professional level, for me, that meant that I couldn't do my job.
Right.
And so when you're in a situation like that, there are all sorts of emotions that make you want to stay, keep things going the way they were. It's kind of like a relationship, but you have to recognize when things cannot be repaired. Yeah. And you have to remember too that you're responsible for your own life, your own happiness, and for your family. And if you are in a situation where things are not going to get better, you have to leave.
Yeah.
You have to make that decision. Life is long. You have to take your opportunities where they come. And if you have the courage to leave a difficult or impossible situation, in my experience, providence will almost always bring you something else. And you just have to have the attitude and the willingness to go look for it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And and as we all know, a chapter ends and a new chapter is awaiting for us, right? So for sure, we all remember the night back in August in 1997 when Diana died in the tragic car crash. Do you remember where you were at that moment and what came to your mind when you heard about it?
Well, I resigned a year before she died, so we had no contact by this stage. You know, we parted on bad terms, which is a shame. And the real tragedy, Diana, is that she died thinking that I had betrayed her.
Oh, I know.
Thanks to the lies that she was told. That's very upsetting. But when I got the news, it was very early in the morning. And I was terribly shocked, obviously, and upset. But part of me almost was not surprised. By that stage, she no longer had the kind of support structure that I had created, and she had put herself in the care of people who were not competent to look after her. If you study as I have, I testified at the inquest into her death. She died because of incompetence, because of negligence, lack of planning, lack of common sense, lack of proper procedures. Of course, what happened was that she had meant that she was vulnerable to those kind of misjudgments. And that was very, very, very sad. And she left a gap in the royal family, but also I think in the world that will never be filled.
And I think you told me that you attended the funeral. You were even kind of involved in it, right?
Well, I went to Buckingham Palace to see if I could help. You know, they had to arrange the funeral very quickly. Most royal deaths happen after long illnesses. We've just seen the death of Prince Philip. There was plenty of time to prepare for his funeral. There was no time to prepare for Diana's funeral. So I went to see if I could help at the palace. Of course, they had taken another funeral plan off the shelf and adapted it. So there wasn't much I was able to do. But the funeral itself was extraordinarily moving. The great thing was I had a seat in the Abbey, not with all the VIPs, but with Diana's charities. So I was seeing again faces that I hadn't seen in years, great friendships. And so right after the funeral, we went outside into Parliament Square, and it was a beautiful sunny day. And at our end of the Abbey, with all these old friends, instead of it being a sad occasion, it became a bit of a celebration. And we shared stories and memories of Diana, great happy things, which I felt was a very suitable way to mark the day.
Oh, that's so beautiful indeed. So what would you think? Why is Diana's legacy still so strong? I mean, just the other day, when she was supposed to turn 60 years old, there were lots of documentations going on the television. And so many people still talk about her. So what do you think? What is it about her legacy?
Well, one reason I think we still remember her, Diana, is that she did so much in such a short time. If you think about it, her youngest son, Harry, is now older than she was when she died.
Yeah,
she did all
true.
that.
It's true.
And her experience mirrors our experience. If you think about it, it was a mixture of achievement and sadness and disappointment and ultimately tragedy. A lot of her life is mirrored in other people's lives. And yet, the lessons she left us, that it's okay to be vulnerable and strong,
yes,
I think has never been more relevant.
Yeah.
And her combination of duty and compassion is still very relevant. And she did leave us a lot of great images. And it is those images. I mean, this was how I planned her programs, that you could see what she was doing through the images that the world saw.
Yeah.
And unlike a lot of modern spin doctoring, news management, PR, if you look, for example, at the modern royal family, they all employ PR experts, news managers. Some of them, in the case of Harry and Meghan, expert Hollywood news managers, image makers. Diana didn't even have a press secretary. We had no PR contracted. We would borrow one of the Queen's press secretaries for tours. Mm-hmm. But the rest was, and Diana believed in this. She did her own PR. She said,
and she did it well. She did it well.
Yep. If you want to know what my message is, look at what I'm doing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this is indeed part of the legacy we still see. That's wonderful. And you just mentioned Harry, actually. So we all know how extremely important the kids were for Diana. So lots of pictures have been, of course, seen how happy she was with the kids. So what is your memory of young William and Harry?
Well, I suppose I was lucky, Diana, in that they had a very well-organized nursery organization. They had nannies, they had their own protection, they had drivers, and they were at school a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I didn't go looking for them. They were noisy little boys, and I had a lot of work to do. So, but you came across them quite a lot. And one very important aspect of Diana's life, of course, was that she should be home in time for baths and stories and all of that, which is one reason why her day-to-day timetable had to be so efficient.
Yes.
So that she could get back for important William and Harry moments.
Yeah.
And of course, she did bring them up in a different way from previous generations. Not, I think this is a mistake people make, not to make them feel that they were normal.
Yeah.
Because she knew their lives would never be normal.
No.
But at least to give them an understanding of what normal life was like for normal kids.
Yeah. And interestingly, one of the boys decided to have a normal life now, kind of a normal life by leaving the UK. So, but that's a whole other story. So Patrick, I cannot ask you, I have to ask you about The Crown, of course. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people here listening to us, and I'm a big fan as well, watch the Netflix show. It's been a wonderful show on Netflix. And we have to say that you have been an advisor to the show, and specifically also working with the Diana actress Emma Corrin. And we're all desperately waiting for the new episodes to come live. And there will be also someone who's playing Patrick Jephson, right, on the next season. So I can't wait for these episodes. Is there any sneak peek you can give us here?
Well, I can say that there is another season coming, season 5. And we've been working quite hard on that at the moment. And I spent some time yesterday actually talking to the actor who is going to be me.
Tom Turner.
Well, Tom was season 4.
Oh, yes, I remember. Who's the other guy?
Season 5. The new one is a great actor called Jamie Glover.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting bit of, they say you have to be self-aware. Well, talking to somebody else about how to be you is a very good exercise in self-awareness. But it's I think it's a wonderful show, and it is not a documentary. It's criticized for not being accurate. Well, I can tell you, they go to extraordinary lengths to get the detail right.
Yeah.
And it is a drama. But it is authentic in my opinion, in the sense that it portrays the characters, the dynamics, a lot of the issues, the politics, very, very accurately. And I thought that Emma Corrin did a fantastic job.
Absolutely.
In the last season.
I agree.
And it's definitely, I think, a great contribution to the body of work about the royal family. And don't miss it.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to definitely watch it when it's on. So I'm wonderful to see that you're involved advising them. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your current work and your consultancy? You've been mentioning that you work with clients, also topics around crisis management, reputation management. These are one of these topics you cover. Why don't you give us a little insights on the work you're doing together with your team?
As you can imagine, Diana, working for Diana, I learned a lot of good skills, not in theory, not in school, not even in college, but working on the job and learning very quickly.
Right.
And I thought it would be useful to transfer some of those skills to provide services for clients. So I have a consultancy here in DC with my partner, Bill Beeman. www.jephsonbeeman.com.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to put it in the show notes. For sure.
And we are we're very fortunate. We do. I mean, our corporate slogan is "We do interesting work for nice people."
I love that.
That does certainly include communications. And particularly crisis communications, what to do when things go wrong, how to avoid things going wrong in the first place, how not to make things worse. We see this every day. Great brands, corporations, individuals who have reputation crises, and some survive and indeed even prosper.
Right.
Others get into a hole and keep digging. And that's one of the things we work on. We also work one-to-one or with small groups on communication skills.
Yeah.
And I particularly work with female executives. And because I'm a man who's worked for a woman, that's still relatively rare, and learned a lot from that. And particularly I enjoy passing on my experiences and helping women in particular develop their unique skills, because so often I have found that having worked for a very, very effective, dynamic, and sometimes impetuous woman boss, I have been able to draw on those experiences, good and bad, to benefit to benefit women who find themselves sometimes in very demanding and unfamiliar leadership roles. With colleagues, male colleagues who need to be managed, and I can sometimes help explain how the different mentalities work.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great service you're offering. And as I said, we're going to make sure to put the website into the show notes. And here's my final question. I can't believe it's already over, Patrick. So we want to hear what's next for Patrick. Any nice trips planned, aviation fan, anything you want to share with us, maybe out of your private life as well? More than welcome to do that.
Well, I'm really fortunate, Diana, in that I have recently started doing more and more work with assistants, with executive assistants, with chiefs of staff, with people whose jobs are in some ways comparable to what mine was. And again, being able to share those experiences and hopefully help other people avoid some of the mistakes I made, and help them avoid some of the sleepless nights I had, help them avoid growing gray hair like me. That's something I enjoy doing. I really love doing that and would love to do more of it. But of course, I retain a love of flying and aviation, so I'm hoping to do. I've been fortunate in having quite a few aviation clients, particularly in business and general aviation. And with luck, watch this space, Diana. I may be doing more writing and marketing work with aviation clients.
Fabulous. Wow, we can't wait for it. And of course, you are regular experts when it comes to coverage of the late Princess of Wales. And it's always good to see when you put some articles out there. So I can only recommend our audience to follow Patrick on LinkedIn. It's always great stuff he puts out there. So I always appreciate sharing this and getting your views. And I always learn so much new when I read these articles. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
Well, Anna, thank you. And everybody, it's been lovely sharing this time with you. And do link in with me. I look forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely. I'm going to make sure to put your LinkedIn link as well in the show notes. So reach out to Patrick and follow him and all his journeys. And once again, thank you so much for being on the show, Patrick. Really appreciate this talk, that you had the time again. And I can't wait to release it, and wishing you all the best. And take good care, and all the best to the DC area.
Thank you, Diana. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Well, I'm pretty much sure that you all going to sign up for The Crown on next Netflix, because there are so many great stories to hear about the royals and to dive into this history-packed series. I'm a big fan. And as I said earlier, I cannot wait to see the new episodes. I cannot wait to see the actor that plays Patrick, of course. So we are all going to be super curious about that. So make sure you reach out to Patrick, stay in touch with him. And if you ever need his service, because he has so much in his portfolio to offer, not only to assistants, of course, but also to executives, managers out there. So he's wonderful to work with. And I can only highly recommend reaching out to him. Thank you so much, Patrick, for being with us. It was a huge pleasure, and can't wait to talk to you soon.
You're listening to the Leader Assistant Podcast.
Please review on Apple Podcasts. GoBulls.com.
The Leader Assistant Academy is an AI-powered, on-demand professional development resource. It's for growth-minded executive assistants and administrative professionals just like you. When you enroll in the Academy, you get access to the Leader Assistant course plus streaming access to the audiobook. The course includes video lessons for each chapter of the Leader Assistant book, as well as the entirety of the Leader Assistant workbook, study, and discussion guide. Additionally, you get access to my exclusive Academy newsletter, where I share thoughts on the state of the administrative profession, behind the scenes of my business, and sneak peeks at upcoming projects. Your enrollment also includes a one-on-one 25-minute coaching session with yours truly. But my favorite part of the Academy is the AI agent, which I've named ACE. ACE is the only AI agent on Earth trained on the Leader Assistant book, workbook, course, and Academy newsletter. So if you need guidance at 2 a.m. on a Thursday because you have a big meeting coming up with your executive and you want to ask for help, you can log on to the Academy, interact with ACE, and this AI agent will help you along your journey, guiding you to specific resources that are actually helpful in that moment. To find out more and enroll in the Leader Assistant Academy, visit leaderassistant.com/academy.